Well, what do you know? It's a Wednesday and we have a tier list video. We call it
What
W
list?
WF, WLF. I mean, we have a lot of predictions to make on tier lists with the season 1 starting in a week from now. We cannot really cramp them all up into a Friday, so we decided to make a lot more of the
Yeah,
TLFs
we have a bunch. I mean, the holidays are upon us, and the Christmas spirit is bringing you.
Yeah, not to mention everything that is bringing you into Dragonflight. We have to do a ton of stuff into Dragonflight, right?
So
like,
you know who to invite and not invite in your group. I'm joking. Invite everybody.
Listen, this is all speculation. It's a prediction video.
Yep.
It's based on what we've seen in the past, like what we tested on the beta M+, what we've seen in M0s, talking to some people that do high keys and their thoughts on the matter as well. So it's, I would say, an educated prediction more or less, but it still is something, it's speculation. Not take it with a grain of salt, okay?
Hey, and I mean, if we're like mega wrong, it's gonna be mega funny once we actually do the first analysis of the meta, looking at actual logs and Radar.io rankings and all of that good stuff.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun to see how wrong we were. But with that out of the way, let's just jump straight in and look at Affliction Warlock. And
Affliction.
Affliction was an interesting. It had an interesting ride during the testing phase. I've seen doing decently in beta M+. Not that much in M0. So there was a lot of talk about Affliction being like the worst of the worst, and people were expecting it to be like super worst. But from what we saw and what we talked to some folks and whatever, it's not like doom and gloom. It's not like S tier material.
I feel like it might need a couple of tuning takes on its damage profile. I would be surprised if the tier set actually skews it amazingly. So first, to put it into perspective, we kind of see Affliction being around B tier. But Affliction does have a really good kit that can work really well with the dungeon profile, with the changes to Vile Taint, with how Soul Flame also really works. It has the potential to do a lot of damage. It is also possible that from what we've seen so far, the dungeons are just not high enough to fully get out Affliction's damage. But, you know, from what we've seen and what we kind of expect, I think B tier is a safe tier to predict.
Safe zone. The B tier is the safe zone.
It could very well go higher or lower.
100%. On the other hand, we have the Boomkins, who were nerfed during all of the testing phase. We have seen cries from the chickens. However,
they don't leave any room to interpretation, man. They're blasting all the way to
everything
to the moon.
Like Boomkin will be a clear S tier, and we have strong reason to believe this. First of all, its toolkit is like amazing to like deal with. Like on-demand damage, no problemo, no ramp up, just go hit it wild. Single target, super good single target as well. It's like the chicken is great, and traditionally Boomkins at every start of the season were pretty great, at least. In Shadowlands, we remember they were dominant all over the place, Raids, Mythic Plus, and from what we saw in the past and now, it's...
They have really easily accessible burst damage, and that's really good at the beginning of the season when you just want to clear stuff really quick. Not to mention that the damage seems to be scaling really well, and we would be surprised to see Boomkin fall, considering that the dungeons don't even last as long now for it to get its full damage out. So I think Mythic Plus is just going to see Boomkin even stronger.
We see it like a clear winner in terms of like ranged in Mythic Plus
for sure.
Another strong contender. Yeah, very big surprise here. We have Arcane Mage, who again, like I remember clearly when I tested out in the beta Mythic M Plus, and there were Arcane Mages over there who actually know what they were doing. They were doing amazing. They were actually like rivaling Boomkin. Well, they were still far away from getting to the same numbers, but they were close by. And whenever there was not a Boomkin in the group, Arcane usually kind of took the pie in terms of like the damage. And also we saw a lot of them in M0s and stuff, and doing very well. So we're kind of expecting Arcane to be very good. I would say maybe top of maybe A tier.
I think it could be one of the A tier. I mean, Mage has been always really strong as a class, and it might just be that Arcane is the strongest spec. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Don't spoil it,
but
man.
Arcane is actually doing really good. As much as some people don't like the Shadowlands playstyle, kind of making it back into Dragonflight with the Harmonic Echo. However much you like or dislike it, the damage profile is actually really good for dungeons, and it has been the reason why Arcane has actually been pumping for the last almost like a year or so now. So I hardly see it drop. I don't know.
I mean, all of these specs, regardless of the rankings predictions we do now, all of these specs will be subject to tuning at some point and can flip everything around. But so far, let's talk about BM Hunters.
Another
and,
flip.
Like, actually beasts, man. Actually freaking beasts.
I'm like so torn on this because the fantasy of sending a lot of beasts to the enemies and just like swarm them is so cool for me, and I kind of miss that in the Hunter. I saw its talent tree and I was like, man, this is so hard to pinpoint what BM is doing, but once you actually get into the content and you look at your damage meters, and you see BM there, you're like, what is actually happening?
I think it's like the best spec of the Hunters so far in terms of like what they will probably do in Mythic Plus. We've seen it dominate in our testing. We've seen it dominate in M0s. I mean, this is a clear, it's not S tier material, but definitely in front of better than Arcane. Oh yeah, better than Arcane for sure. Now, another very strong contender, and this is very close to S tier, I would say.
I think this is a tiebreaker between the A tier and the S tier.
Demonology Warlock,
I feel like not a lot of people are playing Demonology to its full potential right now, because the ones that can actually get the numbers out are like melting the meters. And let's all bow our heads to the might of the Pit Lord for making a comeback. Well, there's no comeback. It's his first comeback into the game. It's slapping. It's cleaving.
It's his first come, but not scum. It's going directly in front of the A tier because, again, guys, Demonology's toolkit is just amazing. And I think tuning will also have a huge impact on this. However, we all know that Demonology players can always find a way to work it out. And looking by the other Warlock specs and whatnot, I mean, Demonology was like super dominant, super good performing in last.
And it's actually probably one of the better Warlock specs designed for Mythic Plus, since it has way more options to deal AoE damage depending on the tuning, right? So you do have the Imp Implosion, you have the Felguard now that slaps a lot, and for single target you can use the Nether Portal playstyle, which is oddly viable, and I'm so happy that it is. It's probably going to be one of the DPS specs that I will look into the first.
All right, what about Destruction Warlock? I mean, let's talk about Destruction Warlock history a little bit, because we don't see it that great now, but it will probably gradually get better and better. So Destruction Warlock, traditionally, when it came to a brand new season in the new expansion, like you look at BFA, you look at Shadowlands, they weren't really that good. This, with Affliction as well, you can have the same argument there. Destruction usually tends to get better and better towards like the middle, towards the end of the expansions, right?
Yeah, so what essentially made Destruction better both in Shadowlands and in BFA was some crazy-ass scaling system at the end of the expansion, both either the tier set or the corruption system in BFA, because baseline Destruction's kit is okay, but it needs a lot of like player power to scale it really high. We won't have that right now, but a lot of it has been baked into the talents, so I think it's kind of relying a little bit more on tuning right now. Destruction is kind of like middle of the pack. It's okay.
I mean, it's better than Affliction.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's around there, but considering its history, it's probably doing better than what you would have expected it at the beginning of the Shadowlands and what you would have, play with at the beginning of BFA. But it's still, I mean, I'm not particularly surprised because it's one of those specs that really likes gear.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can make more or less the same arguments for Fire Mage, who is next up over here. Ooh. And Fire Mage, as a talent redesign or whatever, I feel it's one of the biggest successes in the expansion. It's really good in terms of like how the playstyle flows and how you can deliver, AoE burst, single target burst, all of that.
Tooltips are amazing, man. The damage meter, though.
That's the thing. I've seen Fire Mages, because we were like super psyched for Fire Mage, right? Overall, but we've seen them like in beta M+. We've seen it in M0s and stuff. It like when you look at the damage profiles and looking at decent players, and you have like a Fire Mage and a Boomkin over there. Wow, the difference is...
I did a key with Greyfear, who was our Fire Mage. He was doing 28s and 29s in Shadowlands.
Really good Fire Mage.
He was struggling to do more than the tank and Sun Pools, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, and he's a very
good
mage player, man. I think he's a mage main for like a long time. And then this is the thing. He performs like almost excellently in our Mythic progression or whatever, doing like 29s and 30s.
They have announced buffs.
Yeah, there's minor buffs coming to it, but even with those, because they're like smallish, right?
They're a bit too small, yeah.
So initially, without these buffs, we would put it in D tier, like prediction-wise, okay? But with these, it could be C tier, and we'll have to have a caveat here. If they continue on buffing Fire Mage, it can be S tier, no problem.
I wouldn't be surprised, at least A tier, because with the buffs and considering that you're gonna have Mythic Plus, which is gonna scale a little bit higher, so Fire Mage can actually pull its kit out, it's probably still not going to rise all the way up to, let's say, Arcane Mage levels, right? So it's probably will need
which is weird in terms of tradition, but we'll see.
Imagine Arcane being better than Fireman. I mean, what does the world come to?
It's, you know, I think it's Arcane's time to shine for some people. So let's
cool it down a little bit.
Yeah, let's cool it down and talk about Frost Mage. Frost Mage, very, very good spec to be, especially in 9.1. It was kind of the dominant mage spec back then. Looking at it now, it retains some of the playstyles you were accustomed to. We were pretty psyched about, you know, the Glacial Spike playstyle and all of that.
Bring it back, baby!
So there's, I know it's a very divisive spec. Some people absolutely hate it. Some people absolutely love it. And I'm talking about the Frost Mage mains over here. However, in terms of like predicting where the spec will land in Mythic Plus, I see it better than Affliction and Destro. Not too much, but it's still in the safe zone.
It's in a solid state. Like, unless the numbers are just god awful under the meta bad, Frost Mage is always gonna have a place in Mythic Plus because the constant slow is really good, especially if you have a tank that, you know, might need kiting. It's also amazing. And, you know, you bring all the mage goodness that, you know, maybe not a lot of people are into Arcane, right? Because it has or fire. They have very specific and difficult playstyles to pull off. So a lot of people can gravitate towards Frost Mage, which is really good. And you're going to probably do really well, at least for the first part of the season 1.
So let's put it in front of the B tier so far. We'll see if there is another contender here. Who's next?
Well,
Marksmanship Hunter. I think this is the best contender, obviously.
Well, Marksmanship has also been a kind of a hard spec to place because without actual logs and Radar.io rankings, it's hard to put Marksmanship like against something like Boomkin. When we see Marksman is doing like amazing damage on the meters, but, you know, we have a limited pool of information that we can draw from to actually quantify its potential.
But we're speculating. So
we're speculating. So right now it's kind of like Demonology, but for B tier. It could be way higher, but I see, okay, let's break A and B with Marksmanship being probably the top of the B tier.
It could have been at the end of the A tier, but we're not really convinced from it. I still feel Hunter still needs a little bit of love. All the specs need a little bit of love. Marksman in particular and Survival in more particular.
Particular.
No, I mean, the toolkit is nice. You can definitely perform it in Mythic Plus, no problemo.
I have a lot of Marksmanship. What's Marksmanship good at? It has like small cooldown for burst AoE damage, like with volley, with explosive shot. You have access to AoE burst like probably every pack. And obviously you can build up to like big packs with True Shot and everything like that, depending on what the actual build is gonna be once the season starts. So it has the potential to rise up. I would be surprised to see Marksmanship actually drop.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about poster boy here for Dragonflight. We're gonna have the Devastation Evoker. Well, I guess a lot of people were kind of expecting this because this is the new kid on the block, you know, to be great. I've seen it. Both in the past and testing and in M0s. It's just ridiculous, man. And it went through a couple of nerfs as well during the testing period. So
I mean,
you played it, you know.
I'm obviously I'm maining Preservation, but I'm playing Devastation everywhere else where I'm not, you know, pushing with my group to get all the dungeon gear. And Devastation is actually doing a lot of damage. I don't see the thing with Devastation is I don't think everybody is actually playing it properly. I think people are still learning it. Because obviously,
that's a beauty.
Myself and other, you know, probably Devastation mains have had the luxury of playing it through the beta, so we kind of, you know, grinded our gears a little bit with the spec. But right now it's doing a lot, and considering the performance that it had in pre-patch, I did actually expect it to be S tier because of how strong it was doing damage in pre-patch, and like there's no much change now. It's just more of the same, and it's actually with more tools. It's doing amazing. It's probably better than Boomkin.
Yeah, we put it in front of S tier for now. We'll see what the other two specs bring along to the table. But yeah, there's no question about it. Unless they like heavy nerf the spec, you have to take into account we're going to have tier sets at some point as well, which do not have like major impacts. There's just like DPS gains.
It's gonna be decent, and I would expect Evoker and Devastation by extension is going to be one of the specs that's gonna receive the least amount of nerfs because they do want the specs to be a little bit appealing to new people. They want more people to test it out. It's, you know, they want data. It's the new kid on the block, and obviously it kind of works into, you know, selling the expansion a bit.
Traditionally, they did it all the time. So fuck it. Okay. Elemental Shaman. I mean, Elemental Shaman. Okay, first off, we have to talk about the first like class that got us falling off of our chairs due to their talents, and this was the Shaman class.
Yeah.
And Elemental is no exception. Like the spec is just amazing. Everything over there works beautiful, and you know, if you play an elemental, you know the spec has everything it needs to do, like AoE damage, cleave
so
damage, single
man.
target. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know what you
Elemental
feel about it.
does have one of the better talent trees, which is relevant to what we're discussing because it does fuel its playstyles and its options for Mythic Plus, where Mythic Plus kind of rewards specs that are a little bit more flexible in what they do and what tools they bring to the table. And not only that, Elemental just does a buttload of damage, man. It's so much damage, it's all of the damage.
I mean, it's an S tier for sure. I wouldn't put it in front of Boomkin, but I can see this as the image of an S tier ranking here. Like, you know, Devastation, Boomkin, and Elemental so far. But we still have Shadow. They're like, our predictions are these are going to be like the top specs.
Pretty good.
Okay, now let's talk about Shadow Priest.
Shadow Priest.
Very, very controversial spec.
It is probably one of the more controversial specs in the way that it's designed, and not to mention that, at least in Mythic Plus is maybe where Shadow has probably seen the least amount of changes, considering that people didn't actually enjoy this Healing Nightmare playstyle that was added in Shadowlands. That was an experiment. It was a good enough experiment, and now it kind of has been replaced with Mindseer, and it turns out the Mindseer is pretty good, actually.
Dude, okay, so you may not like the playstyle of it. You may have like a lot of issues with some of the decisions they made with the spec, and specifically, you know, some of the talents over there and the synergies between them and all of that. But in terms of like pure raw numbers, dude, it's not bad. I mean, you can play it and you can perform pretty good. I would go as far as to say it's doing better than Arcane. It's gonna do better than Arcane for sure.
And there's another thing with Priest. Like, I am still not convinced if Discipline and Holy Priest are like amazing in Mythic Plus just yet. And that means that Shadow brings, you know,
that would be
power infusion.
We don't know about that. We'll place it as an A tier. We speculate it's going to be among the specs to bring and have like really good performance overall. Once again, the B tier is like the safe zone. It's like usually like, okay, if you're going to bring any of these specs to your team, is going to do just fine. Like, but the big crazy numbers, crazy stuff, that's gonna happen between Devastation, Boomkin, and Elemental, while Demonology, Beast Mastery, Shadow, and Arcane will be super competitive, not quite S tier material. Unfortunately, Fire, unless it continues on with the buffs, it's so bad.
By any chance, did we have Fire pretty low at the beginning of Shadowlands as well?
I don't remember.
In the first year?
I think so.
Because this is kind of like a deja vu feeling where I was like, man, Fire the age of Fire is gone. And then just like a couple of weeks later, it just explodes at the top of the meters.
Yeah, but that was after the raid got opened, and they got the trinket from Keltas, the ignition firing. There was that trinket, and then they got the cascading thing, the conduit, Infernal Cascade. And we didn't know about those like before.
It's not much that they're getting now, like some more eye level. So yeah, this is like the general feel of the tier list. Yeah, we're probably gonna come back to it in a couple of weeks' time and see exactly how things have evolved.
And you'll let us know how wrong we were, right? You'll let us know in the comments, or you can let us know right now. But this is a prediction, a speculation, what will be happening in Mythic Plus.
Sure.
After next week, sure, we're gonna have numbers in. I'm gonna get to like the proper, you know, educated, researched, data-based tier list. That's gonna be very, very fun. Fun as our Patreons, because our Patreons are the most fun in the whole wide world. And I want to thank you all for all the support. As always, if you want to join the team, check the link in the description. So goodies there for you. They're waiting for you, you know, up for grabs and all of that. And thank you for watching the video. Flame, say some.
Thank you. And if you want to support us a little bit more, dear viewer, the link to our Patreon page is down in the description. Oh, but we want to put the...
Bye!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.